Queenford. Please mind the gap between the train and the platform. Change here for National Rail Services.
Who's that? Who and is that? Yes, we're starting to film now, but we actually sat down, we actually brainstormed, we talked about some really deep questions.
We should have filmed that one, I think.
Yeah.
That was gold.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Hopefully we can recreate it.
Hopefully we can. But I think why we decided to brainstorm is because we didn't want this just to be any old discussion. It's gonna really answer some questions that you guys have had on your minds. We're gonna delve into topics such as identity, culture, accents, whether you should be like changing your accent. Really, really kind of deep questions, and from our perspective as English teachers. I guess this is Tom from Eat, Sleep, Dream English. It's amazing to have you on my channel.
Thank you very much for having me.
I don't know if you've seen Tom's video that we did together. If you haven't, go check out part 1. Yeah, part 2.
We've been talking about British identity, what that means, what that looks like, your experiences. It's a really, really cool conversation. I learned a lot, I know that, and yeah. So
I really liked your questions that you've asked as well. And I think, oh, getting used to this camera.
Yeah. The arms, man.
It's like I'm just trying to get a stable position. So, where are we?
So we're in Covent Garden, in the centre of London, one of my favourite places.
Yeah, no, I definitely love this spot too.
The lights here are absolutely stunning. It's moments like these, and places like these, which makes me realise that I'm so lucky to live in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and walk its streets every day.
It's great for restaurants, great for kind of hanging out. It's right in the centre of town,
yeah.
Right in the middle of town.
Yeah.
And so walking around a place like Covent Garden, we were talking about how we can hear the MLE accent.
Yes.
So do you want to quickly give a brief introduction into what that is?
Yeah, okay, so MLE stands for Multicultural London English. It's one of the main accents in London. It's a really new accent, it's sort of 20, 30 years old, and what it does is it really represents what London is now, which is a very multicultural city. So it's a combination of the traditional white working class Cockney accent fused with the communities that have moved to London. So you've got like African communities, you've got Caribbean communities, communities from South Asia, and as people have mixed, that they have sort of fused this accent together. So you've got words and pronunciation from all different communities, and it's definitely, I would say, like an accent of the youth. It's like a very young accent. So anyone under 30 in London, it's quite likely that they might speak with multicultural London English. I certainly, where I live in East London, I hear it all the time, everywhere. And so what I love about it is it really is a representation of what London is now.
Yeah, that was a very nice summary, and I think, you know, when you guys are wanting to learn English, a question that we get asked a lot is, you know, what accent do I have to use, especially when I come to London? Is it appropriate for me to kind of change my accent? And one interesting aspect that we were going to talk about today is even we change our accents depending on the situation that we're in, and or like who we're speaking to, and even the geographical location that we're in.
Oh, completely.
So you were talking about your family members?
Yeah. So I mean, I used to be really embarrassed about this, that when I was speaking to my grandmother, I would speak in a sort of received pronunciation, very sort of almost like she had a quite posh accent. So I would, oh, hello grandma, how are you? And then when I was, in the pub with my mates or at football, I would speak with a full Cockney accent. And it was like, I'm such a chameleon. Why am I switching between the two? And I've come to realise that that's actually a really normal thing to do. That it's a sign of emotional intelligence and of empathy and trying to fit in with the surroundings that you're in. So, depending on your social context, your geographic context, who you're speaking to. I have a brother-in-law who's from Scotland, and when I'm speaking to him, like, I'll start using words and phrasing that are maybe more Scottish. Like I'll say like we instead of little. So
it goes to that extent.
Yeah. Wow. I do need to stop that actually. But I think changing your accent is a very normal thing to do, and a sign that you're aware of who you're around.
Absolutely, and I think I do a very similar thing. So when I speak to certain friends who I know live in certain parts of London, which are more affluent. I don't know if I'm proud of this, but it's just something that I'm happy to share with you guys. You know, I kind of I use certain phrases that make me sound a little bit more posh to kind of help me fit in a little bit.
Yeah.
So for example, I wouldn't never say, oh, I met up with mum. I'd be like, I met up with mother. And, and mother, mother,
okay.
Right? And I'm just like, is that really me? I think to a certain extent it is me, because it's something that I'm happy to. I do like using certain phrases, and that only comes out in certain contexts.
Yeah,
and it feels natural.
And
I
also,
think that's the key.
You're not just one identity. You're not just one version of you. You are many different versions of you, and so therefore, it's okay. It's all right to be, you know, slightly better pronounced with one person, and maybe it's a bit sloppy with your language with someone else. It's okay. It's just a part of it's what's it, like a spectrum of yourself, right?
Exactly.
You're not one thing. You're not rigid.
Exactly. And I think this leads into a deeper question about.
Videos from Montreal in Canada.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's so nice to meet you. Oh my God,
What's your name? Claudia, nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. That's easy. We can take a picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
completely. In Montreal.
Oh wow.
I love this. Where were we?
I can't remember. Talking about accents. Talk about, so the main accent in London being MLE, switching, so using various different accents yourself. Interesting that I think a lot of maybe your viewers who are learning English will know received pronunciation, which has long been seen as like the accent of education and of power, privilege, all those kinds of things, and it's what is taught mainly around the world. For what reason I don't really know, it was the accent at the BBC, but that's really changing, and I think that it's certainly on the BBC you get a much better representation of different accents, regional accents. It could be like a Yorkshire accent or a Liverpool accent, whatever it might be. So I think that's really interesting. So when you come to London, you'll hear a variety of accents, and there's you don't have to be. You don't have to speak in received pronunciation. It's not the only accent that's...
Right, so this is where things are going to get deep, and I'm going to ask Tom some really deep questions. Because I think it's really important just to tackle some issues head on, and really just talk about the reality of things as well.
Yeah.
So one question that I had for you was, if RP is often associated with the educated class, and someone wants to aspire to kind of speak that way because they want to come across a certain way, for example, job prospects and things like that. Yeah. And in a world where, unfortunately, in a lot of situations where we are judged by our accent, is it wrong for someone to adopt the RP accent by choice?
It's a really good point. And as you were saying that, I was sort of thinking back to we've just had a leadership battle for the Conservative Party to be the Prime Minister, and I'm thinking about all the accents that they had, all 6 leaders. They were all RP. It was all RP, considered quite posh accents, and it's still seen as having some sense of authority to it. If you speak with RP, whether right or wrong, and this is not my opinion, this is the consensus, is that there is some sense of authority, and so you're right. Do you know what? There's nothing wrong with wanting to speak in that accent if that is the accent that is perceived to be the one of education and whatnot. So no, you're right. It's such a hard one, because there's this balance between being authentic, being you, thoroughly you, and celebrating who you are and having your identity, and identity of course comes through your accent, right? And also the wider world and the forces that work in that sense, and what you need to be to achieve what you want. So God, it's such a difficult one. It's really
such a difficult one.
And what do you think? I mean,
so I think to a certain extent there's nothing wrong with learning about a particular accent and incorporating it in certain environments, such as corporate environments. But the problem is when your opportunities in life are directly impacted by accent. And I've had quite a lot of DMs from you guys and private messages where you guys explained your personal problems, and I've heard a very kind of common story where you feel like you're being judged at places of work You feel like you're being judged in social environments for kind of essentially being who you are, which is kind of scary because unfortunately in some parts of the world that's the world that we live in.
Yeah.
So I think Tom and I actually came up with a few tips to kind of help in those situations.
Can I just quickly bounce off that? Like thinking about accent and so thinking about the corporate environment, I almost feel like being articulate, being clear, those are so fundamental, and you can be inarticulate and very unclear in received pronunciation.
Absolutely.
Just because you speak received pronunciation does not mean that you are articulate and eloquent. So I think that for me is the priority above anything else. Is can you say exactly what you mean succinctly? And maybe that should be a priority. But,
We're just gonna show you guys a bit more of our beloved Covent Garden. There are some people out there who can be quite nasty in places of work as well. So some of you guys have expressed that some people have not been patient with you and expressed that in places of work it can be quite a hostile environment where you're kind of speaking how you naturally speak in your accent. However, there are some colleagues who are judgmental. Yeah, so we kind of came up with a tip for that, and we thought that we should play to more. We should kind of speak to their empathetic side. So do you want to speak a bit more about that, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just like how hard that situation is, and understanding that there's no easy answer, right? But let's say someone is speaking super fast in your work environment, maybe just trying to stay calm, stay controlled, and saying to them, if you wouldn't mind, please could you slow down, or just giving off a sense of confidence, a sense of control of the situation, not getting upset or angry. I mean, I know these are easy things to say, right? They're harder to do, but maintaining your calm and in that situation, and just that inner belief that I'm going to communicate what I want to say to someone is that's one tough one. It's really hard.
Should we? So Tom, you teach British English on your channel, and for someone who's experienced these difficulties, a student from India, for example, or a student from the Philippines, where they are going through these difficulties of being judged for their accent, what advice would you give based on your experience as a teacher?
Yeah, it's super hard. I mean, it's a really, really tough topic, and I think there's a number of ways of looking at it. I think, first of all, if someone is judging you on your accent, then that's it depends on the context, right? In a social context, if someone is judging you for your accent, I would say they're not worth the time of day. Like, be proud of who you are, embrace your identity, your accent, whatever it might be. Don't let anyone else's insecurities or whatnot play into yours. So I think that's, in a social context, I think that's certainly how I would frame it. In a business context, I understand it's slightly more nuanced and difficult. In terms of learning English, I always teach my students to think about, well, how are you learning English? What's the context that you need it? And then think about the language you need, the pronunciation you need. So let's say I'm working in a corporate environment, I'm working as a marketing person. I think about, right, what phrases, what language do I need in that situation? And yes, what accent or what pronunciation features do I need? Looking at resources online, like pronunciation resources, looking at the phrases that you need for that particular context, looking at the pronunciation features, using online resources, of course, YouTube, finding models to practice, to learn from. So listening to maybe people in your office or whatnot, and trying to replicate, use them as a kind of model for your English, and going for communication as being your end goal. That's the ultimate thing, right? Is that you want to communicate your ideas as best you can, and not getting too hung up on, is your accent like the Queen's accent? I don't think that's particularly important. I think it's more important to convey your opinion, your thoughts, your ideas succinctly, eloquently, and doing the best you can in that sense. So not overthinking it too much as well. And like I said, just embracing who you are and your identity.
That's a really, really great point, Tom. Like I thought it would be nice to kind of share my mother's experience when it comes to kind of moving to this country 30 years ago and really struggling with interaction with locals here in London. And I think it's important for advice to be specific as well, because when you are in a situation where you're like, well, what do I do? What do I change? It's important to kind of think about actual case studies and think about how people have done that. So first thing being, my mum volunteered. She was a housewife for many years, but she kind of got herself out there, volunteered, got herself NVQ in level 2 English. This is at the age of like 40, by the way. And so it's never too late to kind of change and kind of improve yourself. So I think if you look at it from the aspect of just improving yourself, being true to who you are, but kind of furthering yourself, I think that it will all kind of come into one, all help itself. So my mum's accent improved, but how it improved was she was able to communicate better. So what Tom was saying, what was on her mind, she was able to communicate in certain social settings, but also in corporate settings too. Funny story, linking into what you said about in social settings, if someone's going to judge your accent, they're not even worth being around, right? My mum, one of my mum's best friends, I was in the back of the car at this point, and my mum drove to the car park, and then she was like, right, everybody get down. And obviously she used the wrong preposition there. You're supposed to say, everybody get out of the car. And then my mum's best friend, who was Afro-Caribbean, was like, everybody get down! As if at first there was gonna it's like a Hollywood movie scene, like, everybody get down! And she made light of the situation. So that's a really great example of a friend who isn't judging my mum because of her lack of English. She's really just like creating just light-hearted banter out of it. And I think really find yourself with people who is able to embrace who you are.
I want to bounce off exactly that. I feel that generally speaking in Britain, like if you come and you're struggling with the language, I think people try to bridge the linguistic gap, right? So I think generally speaking people work quite hard to understand, okay, someone can't speak English perfectly, but they're trying, and so let me slow down a little bit, or let me try and use words that aren't quite so complicated, like slang words or phrasal verbs or whatever. Yeah. Generally speaking, I think that's true here. Would you agree?
I definitely agree. I think there is a certain element of people meeting halfway. So I like how you put that. So people, it's not like they're dumbing themselves down. It's just they use different phrases. Yeah. Phrases that certain locals are accustomed to. But like if you're a foreigner, then a word that we used earlier is bants. Like if I said, oh, I'm just having banter with Tom, that basically just means I'm having a laugh with Tom, or we're cracking jokes.
Yeah.
So I think people do change the way they speak, and not in a bad way, but in a kind of helpful way.
Yeah, I think so. I like to think so anyway. And that really supports any visitor coming here. It just gives them a bit more confidence that they're going to be able to communicate better.
Yeah, we can really sympathise with how difficult it must be.
Yeah.
But I do hope these words of advice have helped.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be ongoing help and advice on your channel, my channel. Lots of resources online, just helping you guys to achieve whatever you want, and keep asking Anpu what you want. How can he help you on his channel? And, comments and whatnot. I think that's really helpful, right? It's like communicating with you, with me, whoever. Like, what do you need? What's your struggle? And how can we help?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely check out Tom's channel. His channel is fantastic. Lots of little tidbits about life in London.
Yeah. Lots of accents, vocabulary, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, check out the video that we did on British identity. Really, really fun.
Yeah, really, really great stuff. And so I think we should try our outro. I don't know if you've seen my outro. It's like the love your identity thing.
Oh no, I haven't seen that.
Okay,
no.
So I'm gonna have to teach Tom. I know you've got a word for your subscribers. Eat, Sleep, Dreamers.
Eat, Sleep, Dreamers.
I don't have a word for mine, but I guess my hashtag is like my little thing that I do at the end. So we want to leave you with one last message, and that's to love your identity.
Okay, dun.
Yes, nice. So we want to leave you with one last message, and that's to
love your identity.
Love it. And see you in the next week's video. We'll see you in the next one, guys. Cheerio.
This is Anpu. Please mind the gap between